I'm Kerry Newhoff, founding pastor of Connexus Church, north of Toronto, Canada. And today's verse comes from Peter, who was one of Jesus' closest followers. And when he's summing up to Christians in the first century, decades after the death and resurrection of Jesus, what's most important, this is what he says in 1 Peter 4, verse 8. He says, above all, love each other deeply because love covers over a multitude of sins. Now, I think that's interesting because it sounds beautiful. It's really hard to do because think about it. The people that you know the best are the people it's often hardest to love. Yeah, I mean, you fall in love, the whole deal. But after you've been married a little while or dating a little while, guess what? It's the people that you're closest to that you see the sins of most clearly. My wife sees my sins and I can irritate her. As a family, sometimes you get on each other's nerves. Your coworkers, they're like, easy to love someone from a distance, much harder to do it up close. So what is Peter saying? Like love covers over a multitude of sins? Well, you see, in our culture, usually we think of love as an emotion. In other words, you either feel it or you don't. And a number of years ago, my marriage went through a really tough season. And there were days where I woke up and my wife woke up and we didn't feel a lot of love for each other. But Jesus comes along and gives a whole other paradigm for love. And this is what he says. He says, love one another. He commands us to love one another. And I remember I'd read that all my life, but a number of years ago I read it and I went, wait a minute, he's commanding me to love somebody? Like, how do you command an emotion? Well, maybe love isn't an emotion. Maybe it's a decision. It's not a question of whether you feel it. It's a question of whether you decide to do it. And so I had to learn to make a decision that I am going to act in a way that is loving towards someone. And here's what I've learned, and this is the powerful part. Eventually, your emotions catch up to your obedience. So, how to put Peter's principle into practice? Today, decide to love someone who is getting on your nerves.
But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came, and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, the other left. 2 women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Another angel who had a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all God's people on the golden altar in front of the throne. The smoke of the incense, together with the prayers of God's people, went up before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and hurled it on the earth. And there came peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Then the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to sound them. The first angel sounded his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down on the earth. 1/3 of the earth was burned up, 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain all ablaze was thrown into the sea. 1/3 of the sea turned into blood. 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on 1/3 of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. 1/3 of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and 1/3 of the sun was struck, 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars, so that 1/3 of them turned dark. 1/3 of the day was without light, and also 1/3 of the night. As I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in mid-air call out in a loud voice, Woe! Woe! Woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the trumpet blasts about to be sounded by the other 3 angels.